Today's topic is evolution of population and species. My name is Rafis Marius and we are at botany class. So the main feature of the evolution is ability to make a variation in a population, a genetic variation in a population. So if we take a pool of the flowers, for example, and in this circle, this large circle is a population of the flowers. The small circle is an individual flower, and we take a one gene that has 3 alleles, and every bond is diploid, so it can only have 2 alleles of each gene. So for example, it can be A1 or A1 A2. So, and depending on the combination of these 2 alleles, the phenotype can be different. For example, the color may be red or white or blue or violet. So, and this is called a Genpool. So the Genpool is a total genetic material of an individual that make up that population. And evolution occurs in a general populations, not in the specific individuals, and that is why it takes a long time for the evolution, because there should be change in the population, and usually the evolutionary change is the result of the changing of the structure of ecology or behavior, and that and this is it's hard to change the behavior, for example, specifically in humans, because humans like to inherit their behavior from their parents, and that is why the new rules and new modifications are not accepted very fast, and most of the new things are usually not welcome. And like in medieval centuries, it was called like even in the governments, the any modification is usually not accepted well. And the same is with the physicians as well. So the physicians don't like to accept new knowledge, so they usually try to treat patients the same way as they were taught 50 years ago. So that is why modern medicines are not uh, uh, incorporated into the treatment protocols very fast, and like anything in medicine is so slow with the progress because of the inheritance. So it's very hard to make an evolution in medicine. So, and it's also very hard to make evolution in any species. Because the it takes long time. So because it's a large population, the human population is the largest population of the animals in the world. So that's why it is very hard to make, because there are almost 8 billion of human species, uh, and that is why it's very hard. And the first one who discovered the evolution was Darwin, Charles Darwin, and he told that evolution occurs in a population. And unfortunately, he was not aware how the uh, uh, how the traits transfer to the next generations. And uh, later, the DNA was discovered, and then the scientists show how the genetic material is transferred from uh, one generation to another generation. And uh, the way it's transferred is by the uh, alleles that are in the diploid organism, and each body cell contains two alleles for each gene, and one allele is for the each homologous chromosome. So uh, like chromosomes are in pairs, so like one, and during the division of the cell, then the daughter cell will gain one of the homologous chromosomes randomly. So and this makes sure that every new individual in the population will have a different combination of the alleles in the gene pool. However, it's not completely random. So and if the population in general is not like here, this is a large population, that means all these circles is not undergoing an evolutionary change, then the frequency of the each allele, so that is red, white, is not changing in the gene pool. So if we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10 red flowers, then if we leave this and return in 25 years, we will still have 10 red flowers here. So that means that there is no evolution taking place in this population. And the allele frequency is not changing. So usually there is one allele that is dominant, and second is the uh, 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 recessive. So and this is called a Hardy-Weinberg principle. So and if we compare the population of the, for example, the population of the roses, so we have red roses and white roses. So and if in a specific population we have like for example we have 100 roses, and then there are there are uh, 90 red roses and 10 white roses in a specific field. So and if we leave these roses as is, we don't cut the roses, then we go after a specific time, for example, several years or year, and there will be about the same number of the roses. So like it will be, for example, 89 roses red and 11 white roses. So still the same proportion of the roses after some time. So that means that there is no evolution in these roses, and uh, the, uh, they are in the genetic equilibrium. So that means that there are no any evolutionary changes, uh, changes of the alleles, and there may be a little bit change uh, in the frequency of the alleles, but in general, they will almost the same. And Hardy was actually a mathematician, and together with Wilberg, that was a physician. So both of them were not botanists. And they explained why these changes are not occurring, because probably you will think that the dominant allele should actually dominate the recessive allele, but that is not the case, because the because this can be described with the mathematical equation. So and so like we can have two like two uh, like two dominant alleles, or two recessive alleles, or combination of the dominant and recessive allele. So in case of the combination of dominant and recessive allele, the dominant will be the more vital, so that is why the color will be of the dominant color, and only with two recessive alleles the flowers will be white. So and uh, this leads to the principle that shows that in the population, uh, in large population, the inheritance uh, does not cause changes in allele frequencies, and this is a usually an ideal mathematical assumption, but is usually not occurring in the real world, because in the real world someone can die, and then someone can actually fail to mate, and but still the principle is the same, and the most the principles of this equilibrium is that uh, uh, and are the following. Uh, so if the proportion should be, so evolution will not occur if there will be several five reasons for that. So first is random mating. Random mating means that there is no any restriction on mating any individual. So that is not case in humans, because in humans mating is not random. So even if you choose a partner for your if you choose a partner randomly, you only think that is randomly, it's not random anyway, because for example you can choose any person in the world, because the person can be far away from you, and then there may be other countries, restrictions, borders, then also there are age restrictions, there are cultural restrictions, so then also financial restrictions, and many others. So that is why mating is not random in humans. And then uh, each individual should have equal chance of mating with any other individual of opposite sex. So that is not true in humans as well, because like first of all, humans can mate with the same sex, so that is also a problem for the evolution. And then the second is that there is no equal chance for all people. So and that is why uh, uh, they not meeting randomly. And also the individuals represented by the different genotypes, like dominant recessive and dominant recessive, must mate also in random, and they should not select their mates on the basis of the genotype or like phenotype. For example, if girls have white hair, so the golden hair, she should not look for another man with the white hair as well, or like with blue eyes, she should not look for the blue a guy with the blue eyes. So she should randomly meet another guy. So, but this is not a case with the humans as well. So this is the first uh, 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 this is the first condition, random mating. Second condition is no mutations. So there should be no mutations at all, and that is why the frequency of the dominant and recessive should not change over the time. But this is also not a case, and we are already familiar with that because we studied that before, uh, like what is a mutation and how it's changing the genetic material. So DNA mutation, RNA mutation, etc. So that is why actually it's not a case as well, specifically in humans and also in other animals and plants. Then third condition is population size should be large. So because this is a chance, this is based on chance. So and the statistic will only work when the population is large, and like the frequencies will be the same in the large population. Because frequency of errors in small populations may change just by chance, and this is actually called a genetic drift, and so that is not seen in large population, because the larger is the group, then the more uh, statistically evident will be the results. So that is why when they make clinical trials, they try to involve as many patients as they can, so to make the statistically significant population of the study. So because the larger is the population, the more will be the more precise will be the uh, research, the trial. So and then uh, so in small population, the statistical rules will not work. So mathematics will only work in large populations. Then the fourth condition is no migration. So that means that the individuals uh, should not go out and in. So for example, if we take a population of a country, the country borders should be closed, and there should be no exchange with other countries. But it is also not the case. Despite the COVID times, like 2 years ago, we have these ideal conditions with no migration, but still, in the normal world, in the even in the post-COVID world, we have migration. So that is what also not the case with the humans. And then the last but not the least is a no natural selection. Uh, so natural selection is choosing the best of the bonds of the humans, uh, with the best colors. So, for example, the blonde woman with the blue eyes and fit body. So this is a common choice for a man. So that is why uh, this is will be not will be a natural selection. Uh, so that is why it's not a case in humans as well. So as we can see, neither of these conditions are not met in humans, and also in plants and animals in the modern environment, and that is why evolution actually occurs. Uh, there is much evolutionary change in every population. And then there is also a microevolution. So a microevolution is the uh, also comes from the Hardy-Weinberg's principle, and uh, the microevolution is the uh, type of the evolution that the generation to generation changes uh, within populations uh, are very small, very minor changes, uh, and they're usually not very seen very well. And this is usually from the mutation or genetic drift, and maybe a natural selection. And this microevolution is actually opposite to the genetic equilibrium, and uh, so this makes a change in the generation. So, and first reasons for that is a mutation that is increases uh, the variation. So, uh, usually the genetic variation is because of the mutations. Uh, Mutation can be the change in the nucleotide base pair or rearrangement of within chromosomes, and also change in the structure of the chromosomes. Uh, and mutation makes the new alleles to appear, and these alleles can show or not show a phenotype effect, and this is actually everything is spontaneously, may lead to the cancer, may lead to the death. So, and fortunately, those bad mutations that lead to the cancer and death, they will not pass to the new generation, because of they will kill the individual before he or she can pass the gene to the next generation, hopefully. So, and unfortunately now uh, they so the modern medicine will treat the cancer patients so they can survive and continue their generation, and pass these genes to their children, but still actually these mutations are completely random, so, and there is no any way to predict that. uh, and uh, Then good thing is that the most of the mutations, like for example during cancer, are occurring in the somatic cells, so they are not inherited, and usually the individual with the somatic mutation dies, and this mutation is lost with the death of this individual. Then those mutations that occur in reproductive cells, they can be passed to the next generation, and this actually may lead to the same disease in the next generation. So, for example, diabetes and many other diseases that are inherited uh, from from one generation to another generation, and formerly the same is with the other diseases that are inherited. So before the modern medicine, the individuals with these diseases will die before they can transfer it to the next generation. But nowadays they live longer, so they have more chances to make an offspring. So uh, uh, so then the so in flowers, for example, the mutation can be the change in the color of the flower. So, for example, this color is very attractive for the bees, and that is why, yeah, the bees will uh, fly here and eat the nectar, so that, and then will transfer the pollen grains to another flowers and make a pollination that actually uh, promote uh, the making of offsprings. But if these petals are not attractive, for example, they are green or white, or there are no petals at all, then the bees will be not attracted by this flower, and then will not make a pollination, and then this mutation will die with this flower, so it will not be transferred to the next generation. And the mutations don't determine the direction of evolutionary change, and that mutation that produces a new allele that help to adapt, for example, in dry conditions, is more likely to occur than for adapting to wet conditions, uh, because they don't have a uh, relationship to the changing environment. So, and the mutations just produce variability, and if this variation will be good for the current environment, then it can be a potentially adaptation, and that will increase the survival of this individual, and that is why this individual will have more chances for the successful reproduction. So, like for example, if a man uh, uh, like works hard and have more money, then he has more chances to attract women with the money, and have children from her, and then produce educate and the offsprings, so they can survive in the next generation. Because uh, like 50 years ago, for example, the most of the families have many children, like up to 10 children, but half of them will die. So nowadays we have one or two children, and all of them survive. So this is a modern world. So that is why overpopulation. And there is no any uh, natural selection among the children, so they all will survive. So because they go to school, they go to the university, then they graduate, go to work. So this is a uh, normal scheme for the every person. So there is no any natural selection. So, uh, but later there were like 10 children in family, and then they will not go anywhere, they will randomly disperse somewhere, and then some of them will die, some of them will survive, and this was not natural selection. So the most uh, the most clever, the most uh, hardworking, the strongest will survive, and that was a natural selection. So now it's not natural selection, it is selection with the money. So whoever pays more for the tuition fees, then the universities will accept those students. So, and so the money will select instead of the natural selection. So that is why uh, the evolution. So it's not the good for the evolution. Uh, so then, and mutations will lead to the small changes in frequencies that are not part of the Hardy-Weinberg principle, and uh, the magnitude of these small mutations usually make a small genetic drift, and uh, because of the evolution force, usually mutations are not very seen, but still they make some variation for the evolution. And the size of the population affects the allele frequencies between random events, and this leads to the changes in the small populations. So if there is only a few individuals in the population and there is a low frequency of the allele in these populations, it can be lost completely. But in large populations, even the small frequency allele will be not lost. So, and that is why the larger is population, the more is the allele is saving, so it's not lost. And so a genetic drift is a production of random evolutionary changes. It results in the changes in allele frequencies in a population, and one allele can be completely disappear if it's not beneficial or it's harmful, and this uh, genetic drift will decrease genetic variation, and this increase genetic differences among different populations. And small populations are very vulnerable to the genetic drift and its negative effect, because it can lead to the loss of genetic variation, and that decreases the adaptability of, of the individuals to the environment. So the rare genes will disappear very fast, and uh, and that leads to the extinction of the population. It's not a problem in humans, but it's a large problem in animals and plants. And when a few individuals from a large population establish a colony that is far away from other population, so for example, if you take seeds from the Russia and go to the Morocco, and then plant the seeds in Morocco, this will be a colony. So you can also plant them on the other planet like Mars. So and that will also be a colony. So colonization is actually can be different countries or like different planets or different galactic systems or star systems. So and this because you only bring only small variation of the genetic variation from the original population. That is why the colony will be different from the original population. So and the frequency of the adults is very different in the uh, colony, and the uh, so this small genetic drift that results when a small number of population from a large population will colonize a new uh, a planet is called a founder effect. So founder effect is usually seen in populations of wild plants that are on islands or uh, so the uh, and is first was found in Canadian mainland. So uh, they have a daisy that is an annual flower. So and these plants produce wind-spread seeds with a fluffy parachute. So that is why they can be uh, spread far away. The seeds of the mainland population so can be very different. They can be large and small, uh, and they have a parachutes. Uh, and the smaller seeds were produced in islands that are near the Canadian coast, and the younger in these younger islands, the populations produce smaller seeds than in the mainland populations. So and this observation illustrates the founder effect because only small amount of the seeds from the large population were transferred with the parachutes, fluffy parachutes, to the islands that are nearby, probably by the wind, and uh, so and this variation because of only I think only small seeds could able to fly far away to the islands because large seeds were not able to fly far away. So that is why they have seen this founder effect. And so uh, then the migration of a pollen uh, leads to the flow of the genes in plants. So if we find a species that are isolated genetically from other populations, the two populations of wind-pollinated plants, if they are isolated genetically with the distance, so and then because every population is isolated from other population, they may develop different genetic traits. So and when individuals of one population reproduce with members of another population, they contribute to the genetic pool of each other, and this migration leads to the movement of the adults as well, and that is called a gene move. So sorry, a gene flow between the populations. So and gene flow can have a many significant evolutionary consequences, and that is why most of the countries do not allow the crossing of the borders. So they want to keep the gene pool without changes. So they don't want any evolution. So they don't want changes. uh, like for example, the Chinese people are in China, so they usually don't mate with the Russian people. So uh, that is why uh, Chinese remain Chinese, Russians remain Russian. So, but here, for example, in Tatarstan we have a Tatar and Russian. So, and there is no any borders. So that is why Tatar can mate with the Russian and Russian can mate with the Tatar. So they will have a common offspring that is neither Tatar neither Russian. So that is why there may be a gene flow between the Tatar and Russian population. And that can lead to the evolutionary consequences. So these consequences can be good or bad. So, uh, so, but usually the uh, genetic variation is increased. So, and uh, and at that specific point, if there is much flow between the population, then the population can be genetically similar. So, like for example, Russians can have the traits of the Tatar, and Tatar can have the traits of the Russians. So, and then you can no longer distinguish between the Russian and Tatar. So, actually, uh, you will ask what is your nationality, and then the specific individual will say, I am a Russian, and then but he or she may have a more Tatar traits like the white hair, like white eyes, and like any so like the physiological properties of the body, and then also the language as well. So can be taught the language, Tatar language. So, but it is still is Russian, but speaking Tatar. So, and then we'll meet another Tatar, and then they will speak in Tatar language, but still, the one of them will be Russian, so with the Russian genes. So another will be with the Tatar genes, but they will mate, and then actually the offspring will be also very, very variative. So will have a genetic variation. Uh, and that because this gene flow will reduce the amount of genetic variation between two populations, and that leads that will decrease the natural selection and uh, uh, so and also the populations will be distinct as well. So then let's talk about the natural selection. So what is a natural selection? This is actually the first proposed by also by Darwin. Charles Darwin was a red person, and then uh, natural selection is will preserve those individuals with a favorable phenotype. So that means the phenotype that is good for the current conditions, and then it will be eliminate unfavorable phenotype. So and those individuals with the advantage phenotype, they will survive and produce offsprings, and then uh, they will compete for the houses and food, and then will select other individuals that survive and will also reproduce. So that is why most people try want to get a larger house, more food, and so they want to survive. So they are not just greedy; they just want to survive. So this is a natural selection. then the population of the favorable alleles will increase, and that is can be happen to simultaneously with the microevolutionary processes that are mutations, genetic drift, and gene flow we discussed before. And then this natural selection leads to the evolutionary change. So, and that explains why the humans are so well adapted to the environment, and also explains the diversity of the nature, and that is why natural selection makes it very adapting to the environments, and uh, in and the mechanism of this natural selection, they don't make a good population. They make those individuals that are less adapted, they will be less, so they will not survive and pass their elders and offsprings, and they reduce in frequency, but they still remain, uh, and because the natural selection changes the composition of the gene pool, but it's not completely removing all the alleles. And uh, uh, and because of the probability, so usually more favorable alleles will that are good for the adaptation will be seen in the offsprings. So that is why we will have more children with the uh, good memory, with the no diseases, no diabetes, so etc. etc. So very clever, and that is why every year children are more clever than the previous year. So actually, this is a natural selection, and the natural selection is not modifying the genotype, is modifying phenotype, and this is actually, but usually yes, the phenotype is dependent on the genotype, uh, but usually it's not the single gene, like for example the diabetes is not a single gene, it is like 250 genes spread across the DNA, and the uh, and this rule is first discovered by the Mendel, uh, and he observed the golden pairs, uh, and also the interaction between the genes of the single trait. Uh, so and three kinds of the selection occurs in the normal distribution of a phenotype: stabilizing, directional, and disruptive selection. So the main process of natural selection is a stabilizing selection. So this makes the adaptation to the environment. So and most of the time population is under the influence of stabilizing selection that usually decreases the phenotypic extremes. So the average properties are usually more favorable. Sorry, and if an environment changes over time, directional selection may be favorable for the phenotype uh, of the extremes, and then it gradually can replace another phenotype. And for example, the size of the fruit can be advantageous in pairs, and then will common in the population and will replace small pairs. And this alleles will be favorable under the new circumstances and will only present in this particular population. So actually the pairs that are for the production of the crops. And sometimes the changes in the environment uh, favor for two or more different phenotypes at the expense of the means. So that is, more than one phenotype may be favored in the new environment. So this disruptive selection is a special type of the directional selection in which there are several directions rather than one uh, can increase. So uh, and uh, this is usually not average and not for the intermediate, so it can be any direction. Okay, so I think that is all for today, and thank you for your attention, and see you next week.